It's Willie D, y'all, back with another episode of information and instructions to help you navigate through this wild, crazy, beautiful world. In the studio, Judge Katherine Thomas.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Willie, Mr. Dennis. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Probably not doing as well as you. Like you're a legend, you know that, right?
I'm not.
But okay, well, you know what? Let me back up.
Okay.
I can't call you a legend right now because you're just too young. I mean, you've done some legendary stuff, but I just can't just yet call you a legend. It's only one way to be a legend when you're as young as you are, and we don't want that to happen yet.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
but we'll hold off on it.
Yeah.
But age will get you there. You will be there because you did something very special, historical. You became the youngest district court judge in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah,
that's
pretty cool.
I saw the video with all the family and stuff.
Yeah.
In the courtroom.
Yeah.
You had a lot of support. You grew up in a village, huh?
Yeah. I'm still there.
Yeah, I could tell.
Yeah. You'll meet my parents one day, and you can see that I'm the byproduct of community.
Yeah. Yeah, that means something.
Yeah.
That means something. I also saw you, I think you were giving out food or something. Like there was food and supplies. You was working with the Prince.
The
Prince complex.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How long have you been working with the Prince complex?
So I met Jay through my friend Carl, who I worked with when I was a DA at the Harris County District Attorney's Office. Yeah. And when I first started the DA's office, I think Black prosecutors, we get a bad rap because people think that we're the ops. Yeah. And that...
What people?
You said what people?
What people?
Black people.
Yeah.
They think that there is this like misnomer that if you are a prosecutor, the only thing you want to do is prosecute. Yeah. And when I was in law school, I was able to work under the district attorney's office in Harris County and specifically with Black prosecutors. And I saw internally how important it was to have people who look like me with that lens and experience to be able to know whether cases should be dismissed, whether cases should even be filed, because here in Harris County, police cannot make an arrest unless they first call the district attorney's office. Now, they can believe that you may have committed a crime, but unless the district attorney's office is called, that's the only way that they can actually make an arrest. And so I met a lot of people at the district attorney's office, and I'm like, wow, I need to be in the room where there's power. I need to be able to make the important decisions. And so when I was at the DA's office, I worked with Carl on one. I was a prosecutor and he was a defense attorney on a case. And I remember him coming up to me. I was a baby prosecutor, and he's like, this case needs to be dismissed. And I'm just like, oh, this is just another sleazy defense attorney telling me that his client just needs to get off. But what I didn't realize in that moment is that I should have evaluated that case better. I should have used all of the things that he was giving me to say, maybe this isn't a case that shouldn't proceed because we can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And it was in moments like that when I realized that the system was bigger than just prosecuting and being a defense. It wasn't just black and white. Like, you have to be able to have the foresight to know which cases should move forward and know how much power there is in being able to dismiss cases that should be dismissed or prosecute cases that should be prosecuted. So we formed a relationship from there. And then I was able to meet some of his village too, talking about villages. And Mr. Prince is one of those people in his village.
Yeah. Oh, and my village.
And your village, yeah.
Yeah. So being a judge, there is a certain level of expectation for punishment.
Yeah.
And when you decide that, I'm not accepting this or I'm not accepting that, I'm pretty sure at times the higher ups are saying, what are you talking about? And I'm sure when you walk through those halls at times, you might feel like the ops to your colleagues. Because some of your colleagues, quite frankly, are there to prosecute and to put people in jail. They get off on it. They like it, especially Black people. They like to put Black people in jail. So, when you got in, did they try to daughter you? You know how you say you tried to son you? You know, did they try, some of them try to daughter you because you were so young, you know?
Yeah.
And you're a Black woman?
Yeah. I think I did experience that a little bit. So when I became a judge, people thought that I was going to be a prosecutor from the bench. And I think that is the expectation with most judges whenever you take the bench. So whatever you did before, people think that you were just going to be that version of yourself on the bench. And something that a lawyer told me once that I thought was the biggest compliment. He was like, I'll be honest, I thought you were going to be a DA from the bench. I thought you were going to be very state friendly. He's like, I realized is that you were just good at your job. So when you were at the DA's office, you were a good prosecutor. And now that you're a judge, you're a good judge because you're fair and you listen. And so it's important in this role, even if you think I'm going to do this on a case. Like sometimes there are cases I see and on its face, that's why it's so important to listen. And on its face, things can sound terrible. They can sound really bad. But I always afford both sides an opportunity to tell me more. And things aren't, sometimes they are as bad as they seem, and sometimes they're not. And sometimes you just need to get to know the human being or the person in totality before you make a decision. And one thing I always do before I take the bench is pray. I ask God to really give me the insight to be compassionate where I need to be, to show second, third, sometimes fourth chances where I need to be, but also use the rule and the order of law when I need to also. And so that's kind of been the cadence that I've operated on since I've taken the bench, is to always be fair and just know that everything is not always what it seems just because it presents one way. And so some lawyers did. Yeah, they thought that, you know, she's too young. It's so funny because the sentiment around my name now is you are the youngest judge, right? Like people applaud me for that. But when I was running, it was the one thing people said, this is the reason why we should not support her. We shouldn't support her because she's too young. She doesn't have enough experience. And I find it interesting that, and this is kind of what the Bible talks, I hate to get spiritual, but this is what the Bible talks about. Like, you're not too young. All of the gifts that God is giving you, you can take those gifts and those experiences and bring them to the bench. And that's what I did. And so, yes, it is an achievement. It is legendary to be a young judge because I can bring my experiences onto the bench. But it's also one of the reasons why people thought, oh, well, maybe she's not qualified. Maybe she's not ready.
Yeah. 30. You got in at 30. You're 33 now. Right?
Yeah, I won the primary actually at 29.
Yeah. But what are you thinking? Like before you decided to run for judgeship, what are you thinking? Like, I know you had to be cognizant that there's never been a judge that young before in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
How did you even prepare for something like that, a moment like that?
You know, I was not thinking about my age. I did not think about it. I was kind of at a cross section where I was at the DA's office. And while I enjoyed the work and I did find it fulfilling, I knew that I was ready to transition to something different. And I thought about doing defense work, but I wasn't passionate about that.
Just really quick, I want to interject before I forget. I thought that would be a natural progression myself, because normally when people go and work in the DA office, they become a AD. The natural thing to do is to pursue defense attorney.
Exactly.
They
the
go
defense
into
part.
defense.
Yeah.
Yes. But you went into.
I wasn't passionate about that.
So why did you seek a judgeship?
I've always wanted to be a judge. My mom actually showed me a school project that I did when I was running. And the project was like, tell us what you want to be when you grow up. And I wrote a judge. And this is at 4 years old. And I don't know if I had ever seen a judge, but it was always something I knew I wanted to do. And I remember talking to my mentor because I was at this crossroads. I wasn't passionate about civil litigation. I knew I could do all of these things, but I wasn't passionate about it. And I talked to my mentor and he was like, well, don't you want to be a judge? Because it was something that I had shared with him before. And I said, yeah, but, I'm not ready yet. I got to, plant some more seeds. I got to take some more time. And he's like, you realize age doesn't equal experience. He's like, you've tried more cases than half of those judges on the bench. He's like, you're ready. The only person stopping you is you.
This is Carl Thomas.
This wasn't Carl Moore at the time. This was one of my other mentors. And I thought about it, and he told me, he said, I'm giving you 24 hours to decide whether you're going to run. And I just thought he was joking, because who can make a decision like that in 24 hours? But I talked to some other people who I trusted, and that was important for me, because I had to talk to people who knew me and who weren't just going to tell me not to do it because it wasn't the most popular thing to do. And the people who knew me, some other judges too, said, go for it. Absolutely do it. I talked to my family and I prayed about it. And I still wasn't going to go after. I was not going to do it. I was not going to do it because it is scary. It is scary to run for office. It is scary to put yourself out there. It is scary to just even say. I just remember all the trepidation. My voice was shaking the first time I went to a political event, thinking, what am I doing? And I was like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. And then he called me the next day and he's like, are you doing this? And I said, well, I guess I'm doing it. And it was just, I didn't think about it. I just had to do it, because if I thought about it, I probably would have quit. I just had to continue to just like put one foot in front of the other, go to political events, go to civic club meetings, attend churches, meet people, put myself out there. And I just did it. And every day it was just one more thing contributing to people getting to know me and remembering my name on the ballot. And I filed in October of 2021. Well, October 21, October 28th of 2021. And I just remember I was so scared. It was the scariest thing I had done. And then I remember when I won, everyone was like, you're the youngest judge. And I said, oh, no, I didn't. I guess. Yeah.
But you had no idea why
I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't thinking about it.
It makes sense because, Fred Hampton didn't say, look, I'm only 19 years old. I can't be a leader of a revolution.
Right.
I can't do that. He was like, I got the will, I got the skill, I got the passion. I'm doing this.
I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I'm doing this, and ain't nobody gonna stop me.
Yep.
You gotta have that.
You have to. And then along the journey, I figured out what I was passionate about, and I figured out in addition to knowing I wanted to do it, I figured out my why. And I think that's what carried me, and that's what people connected to when I was running, because I think a lot of politicians, I just hate even calling myself a politician. I'm just elected. People are tired of the same speeches. We need to fix this. We need to fix this. Like, tell us how you're going to do it. And so I figured out my why. I figured out exactly what I wanted to do. And it didn't just become elect me because I'm young. It became elect me because these are the deficiencies I see when I'm in the courtroom, and this is what I want to do to change it.
Now, have you came across anybody that you know in your courtroom?
All the time. My cousins.
When your cousins come into your courtroom and they see you, they already know that you're their cousin. They know that, that's my cousin, the judge.
One time they didn't.
It's gonna be easy.
One time, I have to recuse. So whenever I see a Thomas, I check my docket so my family's I'm born and raised Houston.
Okay.
6th generation Texan. My dad went to Kashmir. My mom went to Yates. So most of my family still lives on the north side, and then my dad's side and most of my family still lives on the south side. So I have a lot of family members. So I even experienced that when I was a DA. I had cousins, and it is an interesting place to be in, because you feel like you have a lot of power, and then somebody who you're just like 1 degree removed from is in this situation that is starkly different from you.
And you can't help them.
You cannot do a thing. You, in fact, have to recuse. You cannot be involved in any way. And that's what people, I think, thought when I took the bench. Oh, my cousin is a judge. My cousin is a judge. She's going to get me out. There's absolutely nothing I can do. In my capacity. Now, can I send you resources for people who I think are excellent attorneys? Sure, but I can't do anything. But it really puts into perspective the privilege I have, right? And the privilege, that's why I always tell people, like, my parents really gave me the privilege to dream, because I could go to college and not think about how I was going to get through college. I could go to law school and not be stressed out about how I was going to make it through law school. I could start off at the DA's office making $60,000 and $70,000, and I knew I was going to be okay because I had that support system. And so that's why I always feel, one, grateful, but also kind of like, what are you going to do in this role to help other people in the capacity that you can, right? Like, I can't dismiss your case. That's one of the things people think judges can do. I can't dismiss your case. I can't go and do any sort of favors for you. But what can I do in this capacity with what I
have? Going back to helping out a family member or a friend, you could go to your colleague who has the case and say, hey, that's fam, look out.
I can't.
I mean, you could, but it would be illegal.
Yeah.
See, that's why I couldn't be a judge. Because I'm letting my people, look, man, that's my fam. You know what I'm saying? Look out, Yeah, they're going to kick me out. That's why I say I already know. It's certain things I just cannot qualify for. I'm not good as a landlord.
Why?
Because if you owe me money, you're gonna pay me my money.
One way or another.
You're not gonna sit up in my house and squat. You know what I'm saying? You're not gonna sit there and squat. You're gonna and talking about sue me, take me to court.
Tenants have a lot of rights.
Take you somewhere, but it ain't gonna be court, partner. You're not gonna make it to court because I'm paying taxes on this place. Mm-hmm. I'm paying for expenses and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm paying mortgages. And you sit up here laying up here free? Oh, no. Yep. No, man.
Well, you're self-aware. You know.
You got about 24 hours, man. After that, I can't be responsible for your safety.
I didn't hear that.
It is what it is. But I tell you something that you have heard.
What?
You've heard about these bond situations in Harris County where these people are mad at many of these judges in Harris County.
They're mad
for letting
people
these
out.
Criminals off, with a bond, and they're saying that oftentimes when that happens, it makes the public unsafe.
Yeah.
Can we demystify some of this stuff?
About
the bond.
Such a great question. So in 2019, you saw 19 Black women get elected to office.
Salute all 19. Boy,
all 19.
I was so proud.
Right. And I want to ask you if you had ever heard about bail and it being like a hot topic in the news.
Never.
Okay. I don't think I have to say anything after that. But once Democrats went into office, especially in the judiciary, there became this narrative that judges suddenly were not following the same law that had been in place before they were elected, because people who had been accused of crime, and I'm being very careful with my words by not saying criminals, people who had been accused of a crime were being let out on bond. So to first kind of educate our populace and the people who watch, most people are entitled to bail. Okay, the Constitution tells us that. And the Constitution actually lays out the offenses that the judge can deny bail for. And so the judge's role is to apply the law. We don't create the law. The law is created by the people in Austin, our legislatures. They give us the law. When we take office, we take an oath that we're going to apply the law fairly and we're going to follow it. And so when somebody is charged, let's say they're charged with murder. That murder could be on 8K surveillance footage. And we see it on the news. And you see this judge let this person out on bail. Well, what the news did not tell you is that the judge was required to set bail per the Constitution. Now, people may be upset about what amount you set, but typically for most offenses like murders, you're going to see a range of about $100,000 to maybe even depending on what the circumstances are, maybe to $100,000 to $500,000. Now, after the judge sets the bond amount, the judge can impose something called bond conditions. And that's what you think of like a GPS monitoring device or a curfew or an order to refrain from going to a certain location, essentially just orders. But if that person makes that bond, a judge then can't be responsible for what other crimes they go and commit because the judge has done what? Followed the law. They've set the bond that the legislature told us to do, and the judge imposed bond conditions. Now, here is where the judge does have some latitude. If someone goes out and commits a new crime, because we can't predict what somebody is going to do. We can put every condition in the world, 24-hour home confinement. People will break their GPS device, right? Some people may be upset about the bond amounts, but I can tell you that between Democrat and Republican judges, these bond amounts are consistent.
What's the criteria for a bond amount?
So the legislature also tells us that, right? So we can look at the nature of the allegation. So what is this person charged with? So if we think of like something like a theft from a Kroger, you can probably see, you'll notice that those bond amounts are a little lower, right? Because it's a nonviolent offense. But there's also other criteria. You can look at their criminal history. You can look at how likely are they to reappear in court, because that's actually the purpose of bail. It's just to ensure your presence in court. That's the only thing. That is the essential purpose. Bail is to ensure that somebody appears and comes back to court. So you can also look at their ties to the community. So is this person from Louisiana, and did they just come here for a weekend and then they were charged with a crime? So those are some of the factors that we'll ask. And you can also consider, what amount can this person afford? Now, all of these factors are not exhaustive, like one is not greater than the other, but it's just like a totality. And so when we hear from the prosecutor, when we hear from the defense attorney, all these factors, then the court will make a determination about what the bond amount should be. So let's say like there's somebody who I know charged in a certain court who has a capital murder charge out of Louisiana and also has been charged with capital murder here. That might be a case where bail is at a higher amount than most cases because of the nature of the allegations, right? But even then, if bail is to be denied, let's say no bond, there has to be a hearing, and that's what is not being addressed. The state has to request a hearing for bail to be denied. And so the state has to say, for capital murder cases, this is the case where we believe we are going to seek the death penalty. And not only do we believe that it's called a proof evident hearing. Not only do we believe that we're going to seek the death penalty, but this person is likely to receive the death penalty. And that's a case where after the judge hears certain evidence, they can deny bail. The judge can also deny bail for 60 days if somebody is out on bond and then they pick up a new case. That's another situation where a judge can deny bail. But it's not just, oh, you're charged with capital murder and suddenly it's no bond, or you're charged with theft and it's no bond. We have to follow the law. And so that's why it's frustrating when you hear on the news this criminal was let out. What do you mean they were let out? No, we set a bond, which the law told us that we had to do. And this person made the bond. And now, I don't know if you saw on the last election, there were a lot of constitutional amendments. I think there were 18. Mm-hmm. And one of those constitutional amendments said, you know, should a judge be able to deny bail for certain violent offenses? And even still with that, there has to be a hearing that happens. And if the state doesn't request a hearing, we can't just deny bail on its face. There has to be certain factors that the court hears in the hearing to say, okay, bail should be denied in this circumstance.
Yeah. Why does a police officer get such consideration from the courts when the people that they work for don't? For example, police officer gets killed automatically, you ain't getting no bail. You can forget it. Mm-hmm. Let's take the same person. If they killed somebody else, they killed a different person, and just a regular person. Let's say they killed a father of 6, right, a hardworking man, right, rooted in the community. He get a bond. He got himself a nice little $50,000 bond, a $30,000 bond, and he just killed a man. But if you kill a police officer, that's it, life over. You gonna sit up in here until your trial. Why does the police officer get so much consideration over the citizens who pay their bills? Yeah,
I think that's a good question. I think people tend to afford more credibility and respect for law enforcement because of how they put themselves out there every day, their nature.
But I don't. I don't, because it's human beings.
I get it.
Like that guy that gets killed, his life is as important to his family and his community as that police officer's life is to his family and his community. He shouldn't get more consideration than the people who pay their bills, and they should be held at a higher standard. If you and I get into a squabble and somebody gets injured or somebody get hurt, then we're gonna be held to a higher standard than police officers who gets to kill people, and because they're police officers, they get to be able to say, well, you only have a fraction of a second to react. And, we're trying to get home to my family. Well, everybody's trying to get home to their family.
Right.
And everybody has a fraction to react when they're in one of those situations. But police officers are trained and they take an oath. So they should be held to a higher standard. It's almost like when you look at the morality of pastors, people in the clergy, people will say when they do inappropriate things or they commit crimes, people love to say, well, he's just a man.
Right.
He's just a man.
Right.
No, he's in the business of saving souls. He should be held to a higher standard, but he's not. So this is the part that really runs me hot.
I can see that.
It runs me extremely hot that police officers are not held to a higher standard and they actually have training in these type of situations.
The legislature actually has carved out certain ways that you can prove capital murder. And so capital murder is different than murder, which means that if you are charged with capital murder, the only punishment if you are convicted is either the death penalty or life without parole, right? For murder, the range of punishment is 5 to 99 years. And you can be charged with capital murder if you killed one or more person. So like somebody comes in here and goes on a shooting spree, one or more person is dead. If you kill someone under the age of 10, if you kill someone while committing a burglary or a sexual assault, and also if you kill an officer in the line of duty. So the legislature has even carved out the kind of credibility that they afford law enforcement and how it is distinguished from murder. And just being charged with capital murder versus murder gives the judge a different amount of latitude when assessing bond.
Yeah. Have you ever thought that judges have too much latitude?
Maybe I've thought that. Yeah.
Because in my mind, I'm thinking like, look, if I go into a courtroom and I'm looking at 5 to 99, the jury do his job and they convict me, right? Now I'm looking at 5 to 99, and it's all up to this judge to decide what that range of punishment is going to be. Now, of course, you have your certain tiers of consideration that you have to look at and say, well, based on this, not added up like that. But still, that is a lot of power for one individual to have.
It is.
Over another human being's life.
And so you can elect, if you are charged with a crime and you decide to plead not guilty and you want a jury of your peers to decide whether you have been convicted or you are guilty, you can elect whether you want the judge to assess punishment or the jury to assess punishment.
Is that in every state?
No, it's just in Texas.
Okay.
It's in Texas. Yeah. But yeah, you can elect whether you want the jury to assess punishment or the court. And that's why I kind of like the federal system, because the federal system uses like a point system so you can take certain things into consideration, because it is very arbitrary. You may go into the 184th and see somebody who's charged with burglary and the sentence is a probation, or I'm just giving a hypothetical. And then you can go into the 185th district court and then their sentence is 15 years in prison because the judges have the discretion to be able to assess punishment based off of what they think is appropriate and the information they have is in front of them. So we have 29 criminal district courts here in Harris County. So you will see a wide array and some variances with the punishment and how it's assessed. Yeah.
Okay. All right, going in. I need to bring the mic closer. So I'm going
okay.
in now. I'm gonna go in.
Okay.
I'm about to go in. So, over the years, I've been in courtrooms for various reasons, and I've noticed a pattern of white people going into the courtrooms, oftentimes being offered diversion programs. And these are things that I never even knew existed early on in life. I didn't know that diversion programs existed until I got to the money. And so I oftentimes see white people in the court system get offered diversion programs off the top, no matter what they do, besides killing a police officer. They typically get, offered a diversion program just off the rip. But I don't see these diversion programs being offered to first-time offenders or second-time offenders when the offender is black or are of another hue.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a mandate to offer white defendants diversion programs?
Not that I know of. But one of the reasons why I decided to run for judge is because I saw deficiencies in our system. I'm not going to say what they were, but I saw that there could be some things that we could change. And I knew that there was a way and a path forward where we could actually help people by incorporating everyone in the system. And so when I say everyone, I mean the judge, the defense attorney, as well as the DA. So this is a program I was telling you about that I piloted. So I piloted this docket that we call the Emerging Adult Docket. And it's specifically for people between the ages of 17 and 25. Because one, the 67% of our Harris County jail population, and two, I realized after being in the court system that these are people who cannot do probation, really bond on their own. They need a more intimate judicial intervention to help walk them through whatever they need. So whether that's mental health treatment, whether that's career placement, whether that's just getting a GED or stable housing, what we do is we work with community agencies that already exist here in Harris County, and we just partner them up with our participants. And so they'll have different benchmarks that they'll have to reach. And the way that we work, we partner everybody in the court system is by working with the district attorney's office. So when you talk about diversion programs, the district attorney's office will decide, hey, this is someone who we will offer a pretrial intervention or a pretrial diversion. And just to tell the audience, that diversion just means your case is dismissed. If you successfully complete all of these conditions, your case is dismissed. Why is that important? And people don't realize that sometimes I've been in the middle of a plea in front of me, and I'll say, I see that somebody is never been convicted, has no criminal history. I'm saying, well, why are we doing a deferred adjudication if they don't have any criminal history? Why isn't this somebody y'all are offering a PTI? And that's why, to me, it is important who sits on that bench. Because if you have someone who cares, if you have someone who is not just concerned about numbers and cases being disposed and actually cares about people's lives, I have conversations with people all the time. Is the state going to offer a PTI or a pretrial diversion? And the state will look at the case and say, well, yeah, judge, this is a case we can offer a PTI. That means that this person, they can vote. They don't have, they're not going to be on any sort of community supervision, because just because you're convicted doesn't mean you can't vote. It's only if you're on some sort of supervised release like parole or probation. But it affects, felony convictions affect where you live. They affect what kind of jobs you get. And just because people aren't thinking about that now, they might not even have the capacity to think about it. Like, they're just worried about the right now. How can I get this case over with? So it's just going back to who's on the bench. Like, is this somebody who actually cares about the future for the person who's standing in front of them? So no, there's no mandate, but I think now, like, as we're in a more diverse and colorful judiciary here in Harris County, we are seeing judges who are willing, one, to not just implement programs to help people down the line, but two, getting involved, like, in the capacity that we can, because the state will make a recommendation for punishment. You can decide that you want to accept that recommendation, but you don't have to. You can exercise your right to a jury trial. But even if you do accept, the judge can intervene and say, hey, have you all talked about other options, without forcing people to plead, but have you talked about any other way that this case can resolve where this person's life is not affected for the next 20, 30 years?
Yeah. What prompted you to start this pilot program? Do you have some type of, is there some type of criteria that you have to meet as a judge to have these type of programs or something? Or is this just something that you was just passionate about? I
was passionate about it, and I thought that it, like, who better than the youngest judge to pilot a program to help people within this population? And so, no, I didn't have to have any certain criteria, but I did talk to other judges who had done something similar in other counties and in other states. So I started getting ideas of what it was going to look like, because I was kind of overwhelmed with the information at first. It's like, how is this going to look in practice? What's going to be the criteria for the people that we accept? How are we going to decide, like, even if they mess up, because we know they will mess up, what's going to be like their punishment? What sanctions are we going to provide? if they do well, how are we going to reward them throughout the program? And so there's all this study and all this research about these emerging adult dockets that are really kind of like piloting around the country. There's one that was just started in a federal court in some state up north. But there's all this research about this specific population and why it's so important to get them now, as opposed to just offering them a probation, because we know that they're not going to succeed. We know that they're not going to do well. Half the times they don't even know what we're saying. We get into these courtrooms and we say things like deferred adjudication, and they're like, what? What are you talking about? Like, if we don't actually hold these people, hold their hand and tell them this is what you can do to be successful, then we're just setting them up for failure.
What do you think the percentage of people that come into your courtroom into the 184 is suffering from some type of mental illness?
Maybe 85%.
Damn. So we sending a bunch of people to prison who should be like in mental facilities. Or at the very least at home being cared for in some type of way, or being on some type of medication.
Yeah, so it depends on what kind of mental illness it is. Some people might have an intellectual disability. Some people might have a mental health diagnosis that they've known about for a long time that's been drug induced. And so everyone is not receiving incarceration. There are actually a lot of, that's why I thought it was so important for us to have this conversation, because people don't know there are a lot, not just diversion programs, there are a lot of resources through the courts to help people with mental health issues. And so we have facilities that people can go to for substance abuse. We have a specific facility that we call the Dual Diagnosis Residential Program, and it's for people who have a substance abuse issue as well as a mental health issue. We have several facilities for that, but there's just not enough. And what we find is that if somebody is placed on probation and probation recommends DDRP, the program I was telling you about, the wait time is 20 weeks. And you know where they have to wait? The Harris County Jail. So we need more facilities to help people, because while they're in jail, yes, they may be med compliant, but if the goal is to actually address the mental health deficiency, incarcerating them for 20 weeks isn't doing that. We're just stabilizing them on their med, which some people need. I see people in front of me who, when they're originally charged, they're in a manic episode. And you'll see after some time has gone by and they're med compliant, it's 180 shift. And so everyone does not necessarily need to be in a facility, but some people need to be on their medication. Some people need to receive consistent treatment, and some people do need to be in a facility. But you find is that with people who have different resources, people who have the resources, they can do that on their own. They can go to independent facilities, right? So they don't have to wait in the Harris County Jail. But for the people who don't, they are then, that's why we call it kind of a cycle, a cyclical, because you have to wait in jail. Then once you get out, there's not a ton of resources after you get out to help you. And so.
Do you feel like any additional pressure as a Black woman sitting on that bench to make sure that you hold Black people accountable who come into your courtroom and not be so hard on white people or other people? Do you feel any pressure like that?
No, I don't feel that.
Because, there are Black judges who do that, just like you have Black people who might work in, what do you call that, customer service or something. It's like they got this thing that they do where they are hard on their own people. You're thinking you might have some at least fairness, not necessarily an advantage,
right?
But just we want fairness more than anything. So you think that you might get some fairness, but because it's a Black person, they think that they can talk down, they can be condescending, but then and then they go out of their way to be accommodating to white people and other people, Black people like that. And these are what I call coconuts.
Tell me more.
They're white on the inside and Black on the outside, or brown on the outside. They're the worst of the worst of our kind. And I'll leave that part at that part.
Uh-huh.
But I was just curious about that, you know?
I think the people who would say yes probably wouldn't admit that.
Yeah.
But no, I don't feel any pressure to be anything other than who I am. And that took time, though, to figure out who I was on the bench, because people have their expectations of what they think you will do. And like, especially people who supported you, right? Like, people think, oh, I supported her campaign, so she should be doing this for me and doing that. And it's like, I took a note that I have to follow the law. And if you want to see me here, I have to do that, but you can do it in a way that is compassionate. You can treat people kind. You can be kind to people. And I think those are kind of just the first steps that people miss. Like, we get these ratings from our contemporaries and lawyers in the courthouse, and people can like rate you on how you're doing. And one of the criteria is just, how does she treat litigants? How does he treat lawyers or people who come in front of them? And that's important. Like, it is important for people to walk into the courtroom and know that somebody is just going to say hello and treat you with respect. You got to think about it. People are going through one of the most vulnerable times in their lives. It's very nerve-wracking. And even though I don't consider myself, just like on its face, somebody who is scary, sitting on this bench, you know, and I wear a robe, I can imagine how scared people might be. It can be very intimidating, right? Yeah. And so I always lead with compassion and with a smile, just so like baseline. And even if you have to be sent to prison, that is something I have to do, but it doesn't mean that I have to be nasty or rude. Yeah. But I will weigh all those factors. And even when I do have to make very difficult decisions, I always tell people, this is why I'm doing this. You have a life. This is not something that's easy for me, but this is a decision that I have to make. And so I think you can do that in a way that is respectful, and people don't have to walk into your courtroom and feel like, oh, is she going to yell at me and scream at me? And is she going to be pissed off? Like, that's just one thing you don't have to deal with when you walk into a courtroom. You can be treated fairly, and you can be kind to people.
You know, I'm just sitting there thinking, you know, and I'm not saying, you know, that you're being performative, but people are going to love you. I can see them in the comments already. I can just see them in the comments. They love you, you know, because that's all we want, man. We're not looking for no special treatment. Yeah. I mean, give me some if you want to give me some.
Right.
But I, you know, like, if you could just give me some fairness, man, just be fair with me. Like, treat me like I seen you treat some of these other people, man. Right. And shoot, man, I can deal with it. Right. You know.
But, you know, I think that comes from is we are all one bad decision away from going to prison or jail. We are all. Right. None of us are above incarceration. We're not. And seeing my family members who are still affected by the criminal justice system, and when I, you know, go to my grandma's house for Easter or Christmas, and these are my people. Yeah. Like, I'm not better than them. Like, we're going to the same house. Like, we're eating the same food. Like, these are my people.
Slept on the floor on the pallet together.
Well, I don't know if we slept on the pallet, but I'm saying, like, I'm not better than them. You know, like, they made a decision. I don't know necessarily why, but that's why I can be empathetic and be kind and be fair, because I know I'm not above this.
Who is your mom and daddy? Because that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
Were you close to your grandmother too?
Yeah, I'm close to both of my grandmothers. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So who instilled this? Like who was that one person that was really consistent?
Both of my parents. Yeah. Both of my parents. I am so blessed. Like, I could really cry. Yeah. God, one of the best gifts that he gave me was my parents. And they still walk with me. Like, they're in Japan right now. And I was just telling somebody on the phone, I kind of feel like an orphan, because, like, I'm so used to being with them, you know, just talking to them daily and multiple times a day, because they still instilled in me such great values that I didn't realize until I became an adult. And they made a lot of sacrifices. Both of my parents at one point worked 3 jobs just to provide for me and my siblings. And they never stopped that kind of parenting. So even though we're adults now, like they're in Japan because it's my sister's birthday. She on her birthday trip. Like they are those kind of parents. Like
they wasn't the parents that say you 18, you out. You on your
oh
own now.
no. Like if my mother, if she would want me to move back in, if anything, I'm like, no, I'm not moving back in. But like they are always with me, always, and I seek their wise counsel because I think that I'm blessed to be able to have parents who have lived experiences. And so I'll call them and say like, I don't know how to navigate this. Like now they're both business owners, and like as a judge, you have to manage people too, not just the people who are in front of you, but you have a court staff. So bailiffs and coordinators and probation officers. And so I find myself sometimes calling them like, I don't know how to navigate this. Help me with this. And they've just been there every step of the way. During early voting, during the last cycle, my parents were there at the polls every day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. telling people, please vote for my daughter. And just financial sacrifice. I mean, they've just always been there. And I know they're always going to be there. So, and because they came from humble beginnings and like, sure, I lived a privileged life, it has not been absent from me. And so they were sure to still instill like values like hard work and sacrifice. And like, yes, we will reward you, but what did you make on that math test? And yes, we will give you things and help you buy your first home and help you with the down payment. But what are you also contributing to this down payment as well? So things like that.
Did you ever think that they were too hard on you when you were growing up?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they were strict. They were strict. And like a lot of arbitrary rules, like, why is this a rule? Right. Like, why can't we have ramen noodles? You know, like, what are all these arbitrary rules about? You know,
I'm laughing because my son called me one day and he said, Dad, Mom won't let me go to my friend's house for the weekend. I said, well, what's the problem? He said, I don't know. I've cleaned my room up. I've done everything she asked me to do, and she always says no if I don't do those things, but I do it, and now she's saying I need to stay home. I said, well, what's her reason? She says that I go out every weekend. And he couldn't understand. He's like, but I did everything,
right?
You know, like so. And it was funny to me because I would have let him go because, like, hey, you did what you're supposed to do.
Yeah,
you did what I asked you to do. Okay, go. But Mom says, hey, you go out too much. You need to stay home.
That's what I'm saying. Like, what are these arbitrary rules? Like, I don't understand. But I also think I got the benefit of being the youngest, and you know, once they've like out-parented with the oldest two, the youngest gets away with a lot more, you know? It's like, whatever.
Did you get whoopings?
I did get whoopings. What kind of
whoopings?
They were with a belt and maybe some with a tree branch.
Yeah.
I think I remember one of those. Yeah. I got whoopings.
When's the last time you got a whooping?
I think I stopped being bad in high school. But I was actually a really, really terrible toddler. I hear stories from several family members about how bad I was. I was really bad.
Yeah. Were you taking charge?
I was taking charge. I would curse at 2 and 3, and like even like hearing my parents talk about how bad I was, and like even like cousins and stuff. Yeah, she was terrible. She was terrible. And that's why I'm so empathetic for people who have bad kids, because I'm like, man, there's a hope. There's a future. I was bad, and I was able to
Who put you up to the cursing, though? Where'd you get the cursing from?
So my mom said that there was somebody at my daycare whose parents were going through a divorce. And she said that I would repeat whatever they would say at the daycare. So one day, my dad told me to pick up something. And I told him, you pick it up, MF.
You told your dad?
I told my dad that at 3. I told my dad that at 3. And they repeat this story all the time. Wow. And then they started washing my mouth out with soap. And then that's when we kind of saw that behavior curve a little bit.
Yeah. If I had said something like that to not my dad wasn't like that, but my mom, if I had said something like that to my mom,
it would have been over with.
Yeah, no, ma'am. Which casket color did you like the most? It would have been over, absolutely over. Real talk. Yeah, they didn't. My mama didn't play that. Man. My mama was that do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
Stay in the kid's place, go in the room.
Mm-hmm.
She was one of those type of mothers. Hey, who has the most power in that courtroom? The judge, the juror, or the prosecution?
I think it depends. Because when you're in a trial, the judge is simply the umpire. We just call balls and strikes. Lawyer makes an objection, another lawyer responds, and we rule. So in some instances, depending on what evidentiary issue it is, it may be something that could make or break a case, right? So if that doesn't come in, maybe that's favorable for the defense, maybe that's favorable for the state. If you're talking about plea bargain agreements, in the initial phases, let's say you have all the evidence in on the case. Prosecutors find out all this information about your criminal history, and you may be somebody who we call in the criminal world true habitual, meaning you've been to prison at least 2 or more consecutive times, and you're now back faced with a third charge that's at least a third-degree felony or higher.
I'm a menace to society.
And your minimum is 25 years. And let's say that that's what the legislature has said. And the prosecutor says, I'm offering you 25 years on this case. In that case, the prosecutor has the most power. But let's say the prosecutor says, your priors were from the 90s. Your priors are drug cases. I'm going to abandon, meaning I'm going to act as if those priors don't exist, which they can do. And I'm going to offer you 5. In that case, prosecutor still has the power. Let's say the prosecutor says, hey, I think you should go to prison, but I'm going to go to the judge and let's see if the judge will give you a probation. Prosecutor tells the judge the probable cause, the facts of the case. Defense attorney tells the judge, my client has a drug issue. They have never gotten treatment. This may be somebody who we need to finally send to treatment. Judge asks the prosecutor, are y'all going to abandon one of those prior prison trips? Because if the prosecutor, one, they can still qualify, but if he screws up on probation, and this is what judges face a lot of times, if they screw up, it's 25 years minimum. Yeah. Yes. And so that's something that we have to consider. Yeah, this person probably needs treatment, but is this somebody who is going to be a good probation candidate? Is this somebody who's going to show up to their probation meetings? Is this person going to be compliant with their treatment program? Are they actually ready for treatment? Because while you can be asking me for a probation, that doesn't mean this person is ready to be sober. And so if they screw up, let's say they have a positive for 3 months consecutively, there's a motion that's filed, meaning that your probation could be revoked based off of those positives. And the minimum you face is 25 years. Or let's say you're in trial and a jury has convicted you and your minimum is 25 years. That's the first number that a jury can consider. So it just depends.
But I don't know why I thought this, but I thought that the judge could reject the prosecution's recommendation.
Sometimes they can. And you can come to the judge what we call without an agree recommendation. And that would be a case where, let's say the judge doesn't believe that the prosecutor's recommendation is appropriate and they will offer less time or they will place somebody on community supervision. So you can at times. But one of the things you have to consider is if the state is going to, especially if somebody is enhanced, is this somebody I'm going to place on probation and their minimum is 25 years? Am I setting them up for failure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And oftentimes you are.
You are, right?
Yeah.
And they're right in front of you crying, begging, and pleading. I can do this. I'm telling you I can do this. I can do this. But you have to take into account a lot of factors, like, is this person going to be back here in 3 months with a new charge? Or is this person going to be back here because they've tested positive again?
What about the plea deals? What constitutes a good plea deal?
So a plea deal just means that both sides have adequately gone through all of the evidence. And when I say both sides, there could be someone, let's say you're a defense attorney, and you have a client who you know good and well, they may have admitted it to you, right? That they committed the crime. But you also know that because you've thoroughly gone through the evidence, that the state can't prove the case based off of what's there. Now, the state will evaluate the evidence and they'll say, if you have somebody who is thorough, they'll say, hey, we cannot prove this case, so we'll dismiss it. But they also may say, okay, it's probably a weak case, but we're still going to offer you 2 years in prison.
Especially if you got priors.
Right. Yep. And that's one of the factors they'll take into consideration.
Yeah.
And how recent were those priors?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a prosecutor who says we're going to offer you or make a recommendation of this punishment, and you have a defense attorney who says you can make that recommendation all you want, y'all can't prove this case, that defense attorney will say, we're going to go to trial. We're going to exercise our right to a jury trial. And that means you will plead not guilty. But if you have a defense attorney who says, and they've gone through the evidence, hey, the state has a lot of evidence against you, it is in your best interest to take this deal. Because at a trial, this might be much worse for you. Mm-hmm. And you see both of them happen. You see people who say, I'm not taking anything. And all of the evidence may be laid out right in front of them. And I've seen lawyers petition their clients, will you consider? And they'll say, my recommendation is that you not move forward with the trial and that you accept the state's offer. But if you have a person who is charged, who sees the state's evidence, who says, yeah, this probably is not going to be good for me at a trial, they'll accept the state's offer and then a plea bargain is made, but meaning both sides are giving up something.
How much of a chance do a guy have if you go into a courtroom with a court-appointed lawyer?
Oh, I love this question. Our court appointment system here in Harris County is something that I am proud of. And I don't know if every judge could say that in Harris County for a while. Because we have now created essentially an infrastructure for lawyers who decide to apply, because notice I said apply, to get on the court-appointed wheel, they have to meet certain criteria. So in Harris County, you could have just graduated from law school, passed the bar, you have your own criminal defense practice. You can accept clients, retain clients, but you can also apply to get on the court appointment wheel, which means that you would have to take a test and you have to demonstrate to the Board of District Court judges, so all of the judges, that you are qualified to represent people who are charged with certain offenses. So you will apply to, let's say, get on the 3rd-degree felony list, which means that you can represent people charged with 3rd-degree felonies. You can apply to get on the 2nd-degree felony list, which means you can apply and represent people who are charged with 2nd degrees and lower. But the criteria we have made so exhaustive, meaning that you have to demonstrate not only have you tried these types of cases, you've had trials, you've conducted several hearings, you've been practicing for a certain amount of time, and we are now giving lawyers caps on how many cases they can accept. Because for a while, what you saw was tons of court-appointed lawyers who were just taking as many cases as they could, and they didn't have the capacity to represent people fairly. Yeah. And so you got this image that people think of when you think of a court-appointed lawyer, and it's like somebody who is dressed poorly, who doesn't know what's going on, papers are falling out of their files.
That's usually how they look too. That's how it be.
When I tell you, it is remarkably different. And it's because we have taken the time to actually vet the people who are going to be representing people who are indigent. Because just because you're indigent doesn't mean that you shouldn't get a good lawyer.
So what's in it for the lawyer?
Well, they get paid too.
I mean, are they getting the kind of money that they normally would get from a free?
Not from a retained case, no. Yeah. But they get paid very well by the county. But actually, the last murder case that we had in our court, the defendant was found not guilty, and he was represented by 2 court-appointed lawyers. Mm-hmm. And the first thing, I always go back and talk to...
What are these court-appointed lawyers, the normally paid paid lawyers?
They accept retained. They accept retained clients, but they're also on the court-appointed list.
Right.
So they can be, once they're on the wheel, they can accept clients who are charged with certain offenses. And the jury said, how was the defendant able to afford those 2 lawyers? And I took such pride in that, because they thought that this man, and he didn't present in a way who could afford the quality of representation that he received. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, they're court appointed. And they were shocked, because in their mind, like a lot of people, they thought that court appointed lawyers were not efficient. They thought that they were not effective, and they were probably just going to railroad him into the system. Because that could have been a case where if that guy, he was charged with murder, and that's what we were talking about, on its face, sometimes people, if they don't do their due diligence, they will get railroaded. It could have been a case where if the lawyer was not diligent, he could have taken a plea deal, because something happened during the trial where he actually thought that he was going to get convicted. And so his lawyer and the prosecutor started talking about working out a plea deal, because the jury asked a certain question when they were deliberating. So the lawyer and the prosecutor started talking, and seeing if he would plead to something. And then the jury returned a verdict, and he was not guilty.
How often do defendants let their mouth paint them into a corner and get themselves in trouble and hurt their case?
Too often.
But don't you warn them early on that they should just not say anything?
Statutory warnings, yeah. They get
their lawyer do the talking or whatever.
Statutory warning.
They just sometimes just have to go there.
We give people what's called their statutory warnings. I mean, you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney if you are indigent. All of these warnings, right? And then even if we are just, let's say I'm just hearing probable cause on a case that was filed yesterday, I'll tell defendants, hey, this is just the prosecutor's recitation of what they believe happened. No need for you to say anything. Then I'll get somebody, well, ma'am, it didn't happen like that. Sir. It's okay.
I got a family member. I ain't going to say his name. I cannot say his name. He probably wouldn't even be mad, but I'm not going to say his name out of respect. But he gets pulled over by the police. He get out of the car and just put his hands on the back of the truck. Because I watched the video, right? I watched the cam, the police cam. He just got out and I got the gun in there, and I got
please.
Because if a defendant, if they stay quiet, and if they exercise their right to remain silent and didn't say anything, hell, they probably beat a very substantial number of the cases by just keeping their mouth shut and let the lawyers do the work. I believe in hiring professionals and
Absolutely.
Let them do their job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And you know what people get wrong about the criminal legal system as opposed to the civil system is that the state has accused you of committing a crime, so it is their burden, right? It's not Willie Dixon versus Katherine Thomas. It's the state of Texas versus Willie Dennis, right? And so there is a presumption of innocence, which is why the Fifth Amendment applies. So even though you are charged with a crime, you are still presumed innocent until the state has proven the allegations beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the threshold. That's the standard of proof. And so you don't have to prove that you are innocent. And that's what people don't realize. You don't have to say a thing because the presumption of innocence applies. The burden's on the state. Allow the state to prove it. If they can't prove it, then your case is dismissed, right? But if they if people listen and understood that more, I feel like they would take that into consideration, but they think that they have to prove their innocence and they don't have to.
Yeah. Looking at your the work that you do, what's the most satisfying and frustrating part of your work?
Yeah. Satisfying, I think, is probably bringing closure to people's lives and like the moments of redemption. Like sometimes you will see people's lives completely change. And while in the moment is probably terrible, they think it's the worst day of their life that they got charged with a crime and now have to enter the criminal justice system and come to court. Sometimes it's been moments where it saved their life because they were on the verge of a manic episode, because a drug-induced manic episode, and they're finally sober. And so seeing them on the other side of community supervision or probation where they're sober and they have a job and they have a GED. So that's the satisfying part. It's like this is actually working for the people who want it to work. But then the sad part is that sometimes we don't have the resources to help people. And I wish there was like something else in the middle. For some people, prison is appropriate. Some people need to be in a controlled environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people need to go straight to death row.
Some people need a probation.
Yeah.
But I think that there are sometimes cases where neither of those things are appropriate.
Would it be appropriate for Donald Trump to be arrested right now?
I cannot say, but if someone is accused of a crime and the legal agent, the law enforcement agency believes that they could prove it, then they should pursue those charges, irrespective of what position they have.
What about Pam Bundy? No, can't say no. Yeah, okay. Well, I think you can answer this question. Don't you think that it's a conflict of interest for the judge and the prosecutor to be both paid and funded by the same entity involved in the case, that being the government?
You could use that same argument for the defense attorneys too, if they're court appointed.
Well, that's just started happening. I'm talking about historically. Let's stick with the historical context here.
I can't say yes definitively. I can't say yes.
Why not?
Because I don't think it's that black and white. I don't think that judges are motivated by money, because
not necessarily money, but duty.
I can see where you're going. I just don't necessarily 100% agree.
Okay, moving on. This program that you started, like how many people are enrolled in it?
So we have 3 people enrolled in it now. One of our participants is going to be taking his GED exam next week. Another participant just got a job, and these were all people who we called high risk. So meaning that they had extensive criminal history. We didn't want to go for the low hanging fruit. So the criteria is that these people have been in and out of the criminal justice system, but they haven't had any of the root cause of why they keep returning back addressed. And so for some people, the root cause is substance abuse. One of our participants, that was why he kept returning back. For one of our other participants, the root cause was poverty. He was stealing to make money and provide for his family and didn't necessarily think about the consequences because that was his reality. And so being able to connect him with these agencies who will hire people who are justice involved. And that's important because some people think that, because I have criminal background means that I can't work anywhere. No, there are a lot of places that will hire you even if you have a background. But also like making him hireable. So he's working on obtaining his GED. He has 2 more tests he has to take to apply. Even just having a identification card. while we work with them in this program, every week they have to come to court because it's that intensive judicial supervision, but they get a curriculum. And so our curriculum is like an inside-out approach, and we have different speakers who will come. About 3 weeks ago, one of our speakers had our participants working on a vision board, and they were identifying certain things that they wanted to see for their future. And one of our participants, he put this like picture of a family and like this white picket fence in this house. And they had to tell me why they chose to include certain things on their vision board. And something he said to me was so profound, it almost brought me to tears. And he said, although I don't see this for myself like immediately right now, I just got my ID. And when I was in jail, when I was in custody, I didn't even think that was possible. So now that I've been in this program, I now know that things are possible. And just like giving them that lens has been instrumental in them rehabilitating.
Yeah. When we think of judges, oftentimes we think of the person in the black robe, the authoritarian, more like, like it's the judge, but we really think authoritarian because the judge has to, all rise, everybody get up and
I hate that. I hate it.
And then you got to tell everybody.
I know.
People sit down and then, we're hanging on what she's going to say. And, let's see what kind of mood is she going to be in and all of this type of stuff. Like, so we think of oftentimes a person who has it all together.
Yeah.
But you also are a human being. You're a woman who has a family.
Yeah.
You have a dating life. So you go through a lot of the things that we all go through as human beings. What's the hardest thing about being a judge?
That's a really good question. Because nobody asks us that, like you are expected to just show up every day and do your job. I remember the day after the election, the presidential election, I felt just succumb with grief. And when Kamala Harris lost, and I was so sad because I just felt the weight of this role. I felt the weight of always having to prove myself to be better, but always the world seeing me as not enough. And I just thought, okay, I feel this way, but I can still go and do my job. And I got on the bench and I just broke down crying. And I have never done that. And it made me upset because one of the things that my mentor always told me about is to really be serious on the bench. Like, even though I have friends who will come to my courtroom, I hardly really like smile or like I'm not jovial on the bench because it's a serious place. Yeah. People's lives. I mean, we're dealing with life and liberty, and so I don't ever want there to be an appearance that this is not serious to me. And I remember feeling just overwhelmingly sad, just being in this place and feeling so powerless. And it was the first time that I really thought about my feelings. Like, how do we show up as judges even when we're sad? And that day I couldn't. I remember texting a group of my colleagues and saying, hey, I'm going to need your help today, because I couldn't. And I remember them talking about this in judge schools. When we get elected, we go to new judges school. And they talked about like emotions and just like how you deal with life and being conscious and self-aware of your emotions, because you don't want to be in a place where because you're pissed off because somebody, flipped you over on the road, that you're now giving somebody a harsher sentence because you're in a bad mood. And so it's never the way you want to operate your courtroom. But in that moment, I really thought I could just push through. I really did. But now I am realizing that if I am having a day, or if I'm not there, if I'm not 100% about the decision I'm going to make, if I know that my mood is a little fickle, I'll just wait. I'll say, I understand both sides. I'll write down the arguments and I'll say, you know what, I need some time to think about this, because I will rather be thoughtful and deliberate about a decision I'm making that affects people's lives and just make a decision and it's not the right decision in the moment.
Yeah.
It is hard. It is hard.
Yeah. Have you had that case, that one case that made you rethink the way that you go about doing your job?
Yep.
What now? Can you share what that was?
It was I think anything with children is always really hard, because as someone who does not have a child but who loves children, because they're powerless, you know. And this was a case involving the death of a child. And anytime you see medical examiner photos showing a 9-year-old with a bullet to their head, and you hear a 911 call with a mother kind of like audibly reciting what she's seeing as her 9-year-old daughter has been shot in the head, it shapes you.
No, was this like with a stray bullet, or did somebody purposely shoot a 9-year-old in the
Purposely.
head? Who was this, like a father, stepfather?
It was a ex-boyfriend. Ex-boyfriend broke into the house, shot the mom and the 9-year-old.
What happened to that uncivilized mutt?
He was convicted, and because he was charged with capital murder, he is spending his life in prison without parole.
Yeah.
And so those are the moments where you kind of just like, you got to take a deep breath. You got to go on a vacation, take a few days off to really reconcile what you just saw. Because in our world, we see a lot of very, very like hard, bad, like we just see a lot. And we get so used to it. Like even the way me and my friends like even talk about cases, I'm like, this is not normal. We should not be talking about crime like this. But because it's what we see every day, just like a doctor, I'm sure, would talk about like medicine in this way. But I think when you step back and you realize I probably need some time to myself to just like regroup and reconcile, that's always helpful.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Because I was thinking, like you said, you might go on a vacation, but sometimes you don't have that luxury. So how do you compartmentalize those type of thoughts? And, how do you process that? I used to have a radio show back in the mid-90s, and I used to do a lot of social political commentary. And, some of the things that I saw people doing to people, just so horrific, especially when you start talking about children.
Yeah.
Whew, man. I'm telling you, it was so. I only did the show once a week, but it would take me like 3, 4, 5 days to recharge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's heavy.
It is. Yeah. And I think consumption is really important. Like when I am not on the bench, I don't really talk about work. Like I live a very present, like in the moment, like life. And like I like to do things that are unserious and easy when I am not working. So I like to watch shows that don't require a lot of thought. Like you'll find me watching a reality TV show or things that are light. Like I don't watch the news.
Don't watch baddies though. You're not watching.
I don't watch baddies.
Yeah,
I don't know what baddies is, but like, what's wrong with baddies?
It's probably the worst thing on TV. Women fighting all.
I don't want to see that.
Fighting all day, every day.
Yeah, no. I don't want to see fighting. Yeah. I want to see like just like easy things, like family-friendly shows. Like
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I do the same thing. My go-to is The Neighborhood.
Yeah,
the show with Cedric the Entertainer. Yeah, I watch stuff like that. Mike Epps sitcom.
Funny stuff that's light. I don't even watch the news. My job is the news. I don't watch the news. Yeah. I don't watch any sort of crime documentary. I can't watch any of that. It's overconsumption. It's like I'm hearing it at work, then I go home and I'm hearing it. No, I don't need to hear it. And I think that protects my mental space, because when I'm here or like when I'm doing something with friends, I'm present in those moments and I'm not talking about work. Unfortunately, I'm surrounded by a lot of people who are also doing very well in their respective fields. So we're not competing about who has the most serious job or who is doing something that's important, because we're all doing things that are important. And we are actually like friends with each other because we enjoy each other's company and we just like to have a good time. So that also helps, having a good village and community of people around you.
Yeah.
They keep you humble.
What would you change about your job? Like being a judge, Harris County, Texas, one of those states that when you say where you from, they go, ooh,
oh, I know.
Good Lord, Texas, you know. Like, what would you change about the system if it was up to you?
Probably a lot of things. But one thing I could say probably on its face is really just the resources that we have available to help people. They are so limited. And we talk about these things that are a problem. Like we talked about mental health and mental illness. And actually more than 80% of our Harris County jail population, they have a mental health diagnosis or a mental illness. And so one of the things that I think about change is like, where are we long-term going to do, or what are we going to do with these people? How are we going to actually help them? Because sure, they can accept a plea bargain and they're out of jail in the next week, right? But they will be right back. They come right back. Yeah. We have had people literally charged January the 3rd, pled guilty to time served, and then came back on January the 6th. So we as a society, we are in a criminal justice system, we are not doing a good enough job at actually helping people who want, and keep in mind, I keep saying who want to be helped, with the resources to rehabilitate.
Yeah. Anything you want to add?
No, I just want to thank you for this time. It felt like a conversation, not an interview, which I appreciate because absolutely. Sometimes in this space you're like scared, like is somebody going to ask me something that I can't answer? And it felt very nice to just like talk to you. One, hear about your story, but also two, just like kind of lay out like who I am, not just as a judge, but as a person, you know? So this has been a great space.
Yeah, that's important to me, you know, because, you think about people, you know, how you want to be, you know, you say you treat people how you want to be treated. Mm-hmm. Fortunately for me, you know, I've been on the other side of the mic many, many times and had these type of conversations with journalists. And I'm like, and oftentimes they ask you these questions and you're like, man, get out of here, man. Right. Like you've heard that same question a billion times. Yeah. And so I just like to talk to people the way I would want to be talked to.
You could tell. You could tell. Yeah.
But I absolutely appreciate you coming in. But I do want to ask one more question. Like, I know that you're a judge and you've always, you know, aspired to be a judge. This is your dream job. But at some point, I'm sure something is going to pique your interest. Something else. Something, I'm not going to say it's bigger or badder or whatever, but it's just maybe another step in your evolution. What is that?
I don't want to say it yet.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah, I don't want to
cool
say
with that.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. Not because I'm holding something out,
you
but
I jinx yourself.
Yeah, that, and I think that there is a lot of power in holding things, you know, in. But yeah, there is something that has piqued my interest, and I think that's one thing I love about my generation. We don't stay at jobs a long time.
Yeah,
we don't. We don't.
You love that?
I do because I think
if it's not right.
If it's not right. And I think it gives us all of these different experiences and different perspectives. So like, I'm not going to be on this bench for 30 and 40 years. Like, I probably won't run for office, this seat again. And that's just because I have done the work. I've been here for 4 years. I'm up for re-election this year. And the goal is to win and be there. That's 8 years. Yeah. That's a long time. And I think that we kind of do ourselves a disservice when we stay in these positions and we don't give other bright minds an opportunity to be on this bench and contribute.
So you believe in term limits. You absolutely believe in term limits.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I was on a panel the other day and we were talking about this and we're talking about me being the youngest judge and what does that mean for young people who want to run? And I'm like, I hope that it invigorates them to run because there is so much that exists around the conversation of ageism, and on the other end of that, when you're young, people tell you don't have enough experience. And the thing is, age doesn't equal experience. And if we do have that institutional knowledge, which I think a lot of people do, especially within the Democratic Party, I think we should be pouring it down to the next generation.
Yeah.
I do. I feel very strongly about that. And I don't want to just sit here on this bench because it's a comfortable job. I want to be able to use the experiences that I gained from being at the state court level to maybe a different court. I don't know what's next, but I didn't expect to be a judge at 30. So who knows what'll happen at 38, you know?
Right.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I'm thinking like, wow, yeah, you can shit. When you do it like that, man, you pretty much do what you want to do. Like, you know, really the sky ain't even the limit.
It's not. It's not. And that's what I love about God is that you kind of think, I didn't think I was going to be a judge at 30. Like, I thought this would be something that happens at 60, but it has broadened my perspective about what is possible. And so I'm not putting any limits because I don't know. Even if I did tell you something, oh, Supreme Court, I don't know. But I know that it is possible.
Yeah.
You know, because of what has already happened.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely. But thank God what has happened.
Yeah.
And we are looking forward to what the future holds for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Judge Katherine Thomas.
Oh, thank you.
No more talk.